Welcome in, college football fans. It's that time again. It is time for the first and long college football show, baby. That's right. You're in the right spot. It's conference championship week, and we got some big boy football games to talk about. I hope all of you are doing great on this 27th day of November as we are breaking these games down. I guess technically we're in week 14 of college football. We are in the postseason, baby. And these are the best of the best, the cream of the crop. They will rise to the top. Well, here they are. Here they are, Mason. Are you ready to break these things down? How are you doing tonight?
Man, I am doing great. We've got some good football to talk about, and
Hell yeah, we do.
we've had some good weeks so far. Last week was another banger of a week, but now we get to see five FBS games, and they all get our focus and attention nationally. I'm really excited for it. There's a lot of pressure building. We don't know what the college football playoff is going to look like. But after this week, we will know, So I'm of the mindset that this will all play itself out. But there's a real opportunity here for there to be four undefeated teams, and that be the way it plays out too. So let's just let's break this down and see what we think. And then all that's left will be for them to play the games.
Well, it has been a fantastic regular 2023 season, and we're all so happy that you are watching football with us here at First and Long College Football Show. And if you haven't done it already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, okay? And like the video, okay? That helps us out a lot. We're not making a dime off of this. We're just a couple of college football nuts just like you. And we just want to be part of the action. And this is a great place to do it and leave your mark. You can do that in the comment section as we break these games down. We'd love to hear your insight on those games. And so what we're doing today, and I explain this each of our live shows on Monday, this is our prediction show, but you are with us live. So you're watching all these clips be made, and we're making all these clips. We're going to cut it up. We're going to send this out to each fan base, on YouTube and wherever else you get your information. And so you're kind of seeing the sausage get made here. So welcome into the kitchen. We're about to start cooking. Let's get going. Friday, 8 p.m. on ABC. It's the Pac-12 championship, baby, in Las Vegas. You've got the Oregon Ducks as a 9-point favorite over the Washington Huskies. The over-under is set at 66.5. Allegiant Stadium will be the host for this huge Friday night Pac-12 matchup. This is the last of these, Mason, that we're going to see like this. The Pac-12 is on the way out, but not before they burn so bright here in the 23 college football season. My goodness, the Pac-12 has been a very fun conference to watch, very competitive. There's been some really, really good ball games and some really, really good teams in the Pac-12 this year, and it has been a lot of fun to watch. Not for the faint of heart either. Let's kind of dive into some of these numbers and let's kind of take a look at what the Oregon Ducks have put together in the 2023 season. Dan Lanning has done a fantastic job with this group. I mean, Dan Lanning comes over from Georgia here in his second year, is doing his best to get the Ducks into the playoff by beating the Washington Huskies, who defeated them earlier this season. So he will be trying to avenge that loss. Bo Nix, as everyone knows at this point, is a Heisman contender. I think he's definitely going to be in the group that goes to New York, and I think he stands a really good chance of winning the award. This game, I think, is going to have a lot to do with dictating that. Oregon has got a pretty well-balanced squad, and we're going to go through some of the offensive rankings for the country here. Yards per game, they're at second with 538.5. This offense has been seriously productive this year. When you look at some of the total yardage that they've had for this season, I mean, it is absolutely staggering. They are lapping their opponents in total net yards in their football games played. basically 6,500 yards of offense versus only giving up 3,500 this season. I mean, when they have beat people, they've beat them to a pulp. I don't know if anybody remembers the Portland State game that happened earlier this year. And then the coach did his radio show from Portland State, and he said, well, that was a rough one. You know, we lost 81-7 and had a guy lose an ear out there. You know, and it was like, whoa, wait a minute now. Is somebody lost an ear in a football game? I got to go back and watch this. That's the type of season that Oregon's had this year. Really, really cruising to a lot of big victories, and a lot of it had to do with that offense. Rushing yards per game, 189.7. That's 25th in the country. Passing yards per game, 348. That's first in the country. Points per game, 45.2. That's second in the country. So this offense, pretty well versed with a lot of these awesome playmakers that they've got. Bucky Irving gone over 1,000 yards rushing for this year. Obviously, we talked about Bo Nix, who's got 3,906 yards this year. One of the most impressive things about him is he's almost 80% completion for the absolutely staggering stat there. Troy Franklin, Tez Johnson, Gary Bryant, all your top three receivers there for the Oregon Ducks. Defensively, 14th in yards per game, 8th rushing yards per game allowed. Passing yards per game allowed, they're 36th. So if you're kind of looking at maybe one spot that isn't great, it might be some of that secondary, and some of those corners have given up some yardage this year. So we kind of undressed the Oregon Ducks a little bit, and I mean, there's really just nothing that stands out that's just like, wow, this is a really bad unit for this football team, right? And we kind of go over to our Washington Huskies here. We'll go over some of these same stats. Yards per game, they're 12th in the country. That's really good, 463.3. Rushing yards per game, 105th, 122.6. Passing yards per game, third in the country, 340.8. Points per game, 38. That's 11th in the country. So everything really good there, except for the rushing yards per game. They don't have near as many rushing attempts as some of these other teams, so that has a little bit to do with it. But their yards per play and yards per rush is definitely probably a more accurate stat to describe the Washington Huskies in that regard. Defensively, 95th in the country, yards per game allowed, 41st in the country, rushing yards per game allowed, 124th in the country at passing yards per game allowed, and 48th at points per game allowed. So this offense is really good, and the defense is more of a, they try to be more of a bend don't break style, right? Michael Penix, Roma Dunze, Jalen Polk, Dylan Johnson. Those are all a bunch of guys that round out this offense and make, they're the straw that stirs this drink for the Washington Huskies. But with all the numbers laid out on the table, Mason, what do you think that is going to be a turning point in this game, and how do you see this thing going?
Yeah, well, interestingly, this is the only matchup this championship weekend that is a rematch. It's the only opportunity that we get to see two teams face off more than once in a year. So it's kind of an interesting perspective there. So I think that to understand what's going to happen in this game, it'd be foolish not to study what happened in the last matchup. So real quick, in the previous matchup, Oregon lost this game 36 or 33-36, and I do mean that Oregon lost the game. They outgained Washington through the air and on the ground. Oregon and Lanning had some really weird play calls that is really what cost them the game. I don't ever want to say that the play call necessarily directly cost them the game, but it's kind of hard to argue that, right? Notably, and of those play calls, the 2-point conversion after the first touchdown, which they did convert, but that was that was really weird. We don't see that very often. A team go for two when it's completely unnecessary. The decision to go for it at the end of the half instead of taking the field goal into the locker room when you get the ball back to start the second half. Then again, on their second drive of the half, they march all the way down the field and go for it on 4th and 3 and come up short. And again, they go for it on 4th and 3 instead of punting and making Washington go the length of the field to score at the end of the game. And then, of course, they missed the 53-yard field goal to tie it at the end, and Washington gets the big win. So the question for me going into this game is, did Lanning learn his lesson? Obviously, there was some sort of strategic point he was trying to make in that game. Is he going to try for that again, or Or does he say, you know what, realistically, we have the better football program, which I think they do. Let's just go out there and play football and not put our guys in certain situations and predicaments. You mentioned Bo Nix. I think he's playing his best football right now. He's really cut down on the interception since his freshman year at Auburn. His touchdown to interception ratio went from 15-6 his freshman year to 37-2 so far this season. And he hasn't had a game this year where he was less than 72% accurate. Just a phenomenal season for him. I'm with you, Mark. I have him as a Heisman frontrunner this season, given the team success combined with those stats. The ground game has been great for most of the season, even with the loss of Noah Whittington in October. Bucky Irvin, Jordan James have been getting it done for the Ducks on the ground, averaging 6.75 yards per attempt this season. That's awesome. The O-line is a big reason for that success and for really the success of this Oregon offense as a whole. They really give they really give Bo Nix some time to operate back there and be a tactician. Defensively, Oregon's been great as well. They are not going to get a ton of sacks, but it's very hard to run on them. And on the back end, they give up some yards in the air, averaging 225.5 yards per game, which is 48th in the country. But they average just 10.2 yards per completion, which tells me that they keep a lot of throws in front of them and do a great job of preventing the big plays. So for Washington, we know they really like those big plays, right? And this offense has one of the highest ceilings in college football. It seems like if they hit on a lot of those big plays, it seems like they did hit on a lot of those big plays early on in the season, but have struggled to find that connection as of late. Michael Penix has 32 touchdowns and close to 4,000 yards, but it seems like he has cooled off as of late. 3 games in a row with less than 60% completion. He has seen a lot of drop balls, in particular in that rainy game against Oregon State. So that's not 100% his fault, but still, I think objectively, you notice a dip in his play recently. This home run strategy that Washington has employed has worked well for them this season, as they have been able to rely on 3 of their best receivers in Odunze, McMillan, and Polk. They have a lot of one-on-one opportunities, potentially in this game as well, against Oregon, which we know Oregon likes to play man most of the time. So if Washington is going to win this game, I think all of the pressure is on those matchups. Can those very talented physical wide receivers go up and get the ball over the Oregon DBs? That is how Washington likes to play, but it leads to sort of a do or die situation. I credit the Huskies though. They don't give up on that play a lot of times. They may not hit it time and time again, but they don't give up on it. So credit to them. But that is really the matchup to watch for me. I think that the run game will struggle again in this one. They did not eclipse 100 yards in the last matchup with Oregon. While I think their D will get a couple of stops, I think that if Oregon makes better decisions, it will be hard for Washington to keep them from scoring. They did a great job in the red zone in the last game. Washington, that is, their defense. And they will need to continue that defensively and force some field goals. And then on offense, they need to have more drives that end in a touchdown than not. That relies, again, on that matchup with the wide receivers and whether or not they can win the one-on-ones. They've got to hit on at least 50% of their drives, and those need to end in touchdowns, because Washington is not a team that is going to sustain drives and go down there and kick a field goal. They need that big home run play, and I think that whether or not they can hit that, it will decide the game. I do think that this is going to be a bit closer. I think that 9 points, 9.5 points, wherever you get your lines on this one. As of right now, I actually like Washington and the points in this one, just given the big game atmosphere and feel to this. I do think that Oregon wins, but I've got Washington covering. So my score prediction in this game is 40-35 Oregon.
Yeah, I like that prediction a lot. I I think really it's going to come down to, can one of these teams get after one of these other quarterbacks? Both of these teams have been really, really good at protecting the quarterback this year. And I think whoever can get back there and get a couple sacks is going to be able to, have an advantage and get a couple of stops. I think both teams are going to score. I think you're right. This Washington team is good for 3 big explosive plays a game. I mean, they're just live and die by the explosive play. And I think what it's going to come down to, though, is Oregon getting Washington into obvious passing situations where they're not worried about the run game whatsoever. Washington tried actually pretty hard last week to run the football, right around 30 attempts, and not a great yards per carry average for last week, and that was against Washington State. The competition level steps up a whole lot as far as that rushing defense going against Oregon this week. So I just don't see any real huge advantages for Washington other than uh, some of those receivers against some of those corners. And you're right, Mason. I think these corners and the secondary players, the safeties, they're going to be able to back up and try to keep everything in front of them. And if they can do that right there, then I think that Oregon can actually cover this thing. Um, I like your score prediction. Um, that 66.5, I'm a little bit weary of, because we've seen Washington in some big games. I guess not necessarily big games, but we've seen them in several games score 15 points, 22 points, 24 points, and these are all in the second half, of the season this year. So I'm a little bit worried about them being able to get to the point total that they would need, to be able to get to that 66.5, because I think that Oregon offensively, I think they can pretty much do whatever they want. But I think the safest thing to do in this game is run the football. And you talked about the fourth down thing, and I mean, they went for it on fourth down 21 times this year, and
Yeah.
that's a pretty large amount, but they are getting 71% of them. But that other 29%, man, I can't, I know for a fact that at least a couple of them came back to bite them in the butt.
Mhm.
So is the risk, does it outweigh the reward? I don't know. I think Dan Lanning is going to have to. I don't think that's necessary this game. I feel like the last game he felt like they needed some kind of spark or something, but I think they can just go head to head with Washington. I don't think they need that necessarily. So I like Oregon to win the game as well, and I like Oregon to cover the 9. If this thing got up, to 10, that would make me kind of start to worry because of that round number there.
Mhm.
I think the best you'd probably do is a push there, but I don't know. I mean, it's a I like the Oregon to cover the 9 in this one. I like where the number's headed, um, and I like those Oregon Ducks in this one.
Well, hey, the
Uh,
good thing is we don't have to bet on this publicly until Thursday at our Between the Lines show
that is
that we
very
do
true.
on Thursday night. So, y'all be sure to come by and check us out on Thursday nights. And if you're betters like we are, maybe we can help you get a lean on one way or another in the way that you're feeling. I observe the right to change my opinion. I might be on Oregon, come Thursday night, but yeah, let's see.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Come hang out with us on BTL. That's Between the Lines. That is our weekly college football betting show. We have a lot of fun over there. Didn't have a great week on Rivalry Week. I don't think I'll ever bet on that week ever again. But I feel good about where our heads at with these teams this week. Some of these numbers are pretty crazy between these games. And
Mhm.
hey, if you're watching this right now and you're not subscribed, we hope that you'll hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. And if you're an Oregon fan, Washington fan tuning into this, come join us here at First and Long College Football Show. We do Power 5 college football coverage all year round. Let's get to some comments here. Siegs. What's up, bro? I hadn't seen you in a while. Oregon is going to cover. I agree with you, Siegs. And Mark, you got to work on your handwriting. You write that with your toes. I actually got best penmanship in first grade, but then my handwriting never evolved
You
from
were an
there.
early bloomer.
I was very early. I was writing books in the first grade, and
W
then I've regressed. I'm kind of
Was that
uh,
with your toes also?
Well, that was what I wrote the book about, how to write with toes.
Nice.
And it was a bestseller. Um, and guys, y'all put y'all's comments in the comment section. Tell us what you think is going to happen in these games. Okay. And put your score prediction in there. Don't let us be the only one predicting scores. All right. Don't leave us out there like that. Y'all just want to make fun of us when we're wrong. Um, all right, man. Let's jump into our next one. Thank you all so much for tuning in. Saturday, noon on ABC, we've got the Big 12 championship game. We've got Oklahoma State versus Texas. Yeah, baby. Texas is a 14-point favorite. Over under 55. And this is going to be that's Jerry World, huh?
Mm-hmm.
That's old Jerry World. This is a big line in a conference championship game. This is a very big line. And I'm going to do my best to go through these numbers, and then we're going to try to figure out where Vegas's head is with this line. Texas obviously has had a great year. They've got one loss to that Oklahoma Sooners team there in the Cotton Bowl. Yards per game, 449.3. That's 16th in the country. Rushing yards per game, 188. That's 26th. Passing yards, 261. That's 27th. And points per game, 35. That's 22nd in the country. So right around top 25 in pretty much everything offensively. Pretty balanced on offense there. Defensively, 308.6 yards per game allowed. That's 27th. 85.2 rushing yards per game. That's 5th in the country. Very solid defending the run. Pass yards per game, 223.3. That's 85th in the country. And points per game, 17.2. This team is led by their quarterback, Quinn Ewers, who missed some time with an AC joint injury. But Quinn has had a good year for, the time that he has played. 2,709 yards this year. He's coming off a game where he was 17 of 26 for 196 yards and an interception and a touchdown. That was against Texas Tech this past week. Absolutely ran roughshod over the Texas Tech Red Raiders 57-7 this past week. Xavier Worthy, Adonai Mitchell, and Jatavian Sanders all round out the top receivers for this Texas Longhorns crew. All you Georgia fans know A.D. Mitchell well, and I suspect A.D. Mitchell will be on one for the Big 12 championship game because that's just what he does. Jonathan Brooks took over this team. C.J. Baxter took over this team as the running back as Jonathan Brooks went down with a season-ending injury. So you've got the true freshman back there playing tailback. Let's look at these Oklahoma State Cowboys, look at those numbers, and we're going to get into the takes here. And Texas and Oklahoma State fans, if you're tuning in, we've been talking college football all year, talking about your teams, and you hadn't even been here. So hit that subscribe button. Come and join the First and Long College Football Show. We'd love to have you. We are building a college football community that is literally stretching from Pacific to Atlantic. It is pretty actually wild to watch, and the comment section is even wilder. So come and join and become a First and Long College Football community member. We'd love to have you. You can do that by subscribing. That costs absolutely nothing. And kind of like what we make on the show, absolutely nothing. Oklahoma State Cowboys, 9-3 for the year. They were 7-2 in the Big 12. I think everybody sold this team down the river, Mason. They lost that game to South Alabama earlier this year. What was it? 33-7. Mm-hmm. And everybody that had any kind of Oklahoma State theoretical stock sold it. They were said, no, I'm out of here. And for good reason. The team looked really, really bad. But they seem to have turned it around. And Van Gundy, man, he's just got to be an unbelievable coach. He just has to be, because that's the only explanation that I can figure for this Oklahoma State team to finish 9-3 this year after losing everybody they did to the transfer portal last year. This offense has generated enough firepower to get where they needed to go, apparently. 425.3 yards per game. That's 30th in the country. Rush yards per game, 167.3. That's 58th in the country. Pass yards per game, 258. Alan Bowman's done a good job. Got them to 30th in the country there. And they average 30.2 points per game. Defensively, this is kind of where the numbers are not so much in the Cowboys' favor. They average giving up 10 yards less than what they average gaining on offense, right? So kind of almost just a wash there. They're 113th in the FBS in yards per game allowed, 104th in FBS in rush yards per game allowed, 114th in pass yards per game allowed, and 78th in scoring defense. This offense is obviously ran by the one, the only, the Ollie Gordon, 1,579 yards rushing. That guy is the straw that stirs the drink. There's zero doubt about that. The next closest rusher on the team's got 197 yards. So it's either Ollie Gordon or Ollie nothing, okay, as far as rushing for this team. Alan Bowman, obviously, I said, is your quarterback. He's done a good job there. Brennan Presley is your leading receiver, along with Rashad Owens and Leon Johnson III. So with all our numbers unpacked and the matchup set up here, how do you see this game playing out? And what are the keys to victory for each team in this one, Mason?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of them, indirectly. But, this game opened at 10. So, and that was before we saw the games last week. It was kind of a hypothetical opening with Oklahoma State, and at 10 points, Texas was favored until we saw Oklahoma State struggle with BYU last week and almost not make it. They almost missed the freaking bus, man. If they would have lost that game, Oklahoma would have been in this matchup. And many think a more suited Oklahoma team to take on Texas, as they did beat them earlier in the season. But nonetheless, everybody is kind of putting their money on Texas to cover. Up until now, I think 14 is probably a number where it'll sit at. That's a nice round number. It's a pushable number for sure. But, Texas has had some close games this season, notably when their starting quarterback Quinn Ewers was hurt, but they managed to win every game except for that OU game, their big rivalry game, and are coming off of a big 50-point win over in-state rival Texas Tech. Oklahoma State beat that Oklahoma team that Texas lost to, and that was the tiebreaker that sent this team to the championship game. But since then, Oklahoma State has been beaten down by UCF and edged out a win last week against BYU in double overtime. Again, important because if they would have lost that game, OU would have been here instead. But both of these teams have had very difficult paths to get to this game, very different paths, to get to this game. Texas has been the favorite from the beginning to win the Big 12. And although they have struggled at times, I think the eye test would tell you that they've been the most dominant team in the Big 12 all season long. Whereas Oklahoma State started the season with that nasty 33-7 South Alabama loss that you referenced, and followed that up with a loss to Iowa State. And that was a team that everybody thought at that point in the season was a pretty bad team. Including me, I had actually written Oklahoma State off. I think we talked about it, Mark. Shortly after those two losses, we liked Oklahoma State going into the season, but after that, we said, man, this is not a very good team at all. Well, then a guy named Ollie Gordon started getting more involved in the run game and basically put the Big 12 world on notice. In 8 of his last 9 games, Gordon tallied up 1,446 yards and 18 touchdowns, averaging almost 27 yards per game. He literally put the team on his back in a lot of ways. And I think it's safe to say that Oklahoma State found something in the sophomore, and that he is the straw that stirs the drink, as you said. Someone that has benefited from Gordon's play is the quarterback, Alan Bowman. His completion percentage has increased since that Iowa State loss, and I think a lot of that is a result of Gordon taking that pressure off of him. One thing to me, though, that he's got to do a better job of is the interceptions. He has more interceptions than touchdowns this year, including 2 last week in the game against BYU, a game that they really should have won handedly and ended up needing to go to double overtime to win. He will need to limit the turnovers in this game if he's going to give his team a chance to win. Brennan Presley is his main target, but I look to see him take some shots downfield with Leon Johnson, who's more of a big play threat. He's averaging 16.5 yards per catch. Let's see if they can get something going in the run game with Ollie Gordon and open up those play action shots. Scoring on Texas, though, is not something that many teams have been able to do. Their defense, it gives up an average of 17.2 points per game, which is 12th in the country. And even worse for Oklahoma State, this Texas front seven does a great job of stopping the run. They are 5th in the country against the run, giving up only 85.2 yards per game. Although they have not had to face a rushing attack like the Cowboys, they are designed to take that aspect of the opposing team's offense away and do a great job of that. Offensively, Texas has some serious weapons. You mentioned it, Mark, but their pass catchers, especially, I've been really impressed with. They've got a couple of really good pass catchers on the edge with Xavier Worthy and Adonai Mitchell, and also the tight end Jatavion Sanders. They're all averaging more than 13 yards per catch, so really efficient. They all have home run potential in this game. They may have to rely more on those pass catchers for the rest of the season, as they are really banged up in the backfield. Jonathan Brooks is out for the season, and CJ Baxter is listed as day-to-day. But running back Jaden Blue, it's funny because I was looking at this. They have a running back whose last name is Blue, and they have a running back whose last name is Red. Which one do you want to go with, blue or red? I guess they tend to take the blue pill, because Jaden Blue is averaging more than 6.7 yards per carry. I think he only has under 30 carries on the season, but I think he's more than capable of stepping up if his number is called. Speaking of banged up, this is Quinn Ewer's 4th game since his injury, or since coming back from his injury. Not much drop off in terms of production from him, besides a slight dip in completion percentage. I look to see him play a great game this week against a pretty terrible Cowboys defense. I think he's only getting healthier, right? And this is a good defense to kind of get healthy against. So overall, whether Texas wants to run the ball or throw, I think that they should be able to sustain drives and score a lot in this game. This is a bad matchup for Oklahoma State, and I think this is a game that you'll want to turn off by halftime if Ollie Gordon is shut down. I don't trust Bowman to make plays, and I think he turns the ball over in this one as well. My prediction: I've got Texas covering, and I've got the under hitting. So give me 37-14 Texas over the Cowboys.
That is not where I thought you were going with that. Okay. So I like that pick. So here's the deal. Can Oklahoma State figure out a way to be effective with Ollie Gordon? Because this Texas team you're not going to go run up the middle on this team. That's not going to happen. Oklahoma State, I don't think, is physical enough to just go run at this defensive line of Texas and road grind them. I just don't think that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. So can you use an extension of the run game? Can you pass it out onto the edges of this defense? Because I think that's where the weakness is. These corners and things, if you can get some blocks out there and sling the ball out there to Ollie Gordon, you're going to have probably a lot better shot. And I know Gundy knows that. I mean, he knows what's going on. This guy, it's not his first go round. I think that he's going to have a decent plan for being able to move the ball through the air on this team. I think another key to victory for either team is who can get after the quarterback. It's two teams and two different tales of honestly protecting the quarterback. Oklahoma State's only given up 12 sacks this year, man, for 89 yards lost. And Texas has given up a whole lot more. And in the same breath, both of these teams get sacks. So who's going to be able to protect the quarterback? I'm wondering if it's not going to be Oklahoma State. I just wonder. And if he's got time back there and Texas is focused on stopping Ollie Gordon, who's to say some of these receivers, Brendan Presley and Rashad Owens, aren't to have a big day
Mhm.
against this secondary. So I am going to go against you on this one, and I'm going to say Oklahoma State to cover, and I'm going to say the over on this
Okay.
game. I think that I think that this is really about the only two ways this game can go. I feel like me and you have got it surrounded. There's really only one
Yeah.
of two ways here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that Oklahoma State figures out a way to be successful through the air on this Texas team. This hasn't been a Texas team that has just totally put everybody out of the game and just smashed everybody. I mean, they've had some close games. Obviously Houston, they lost the game to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Only scored 30 points in that game against an Oklahoma defense that's not very good. I'm
Well,
sorry.
they
They're
still have that sort of culture of playing with your food, and I don't know. I thought we were past this, Texas. I thought we had matured a little bit, but
right.
they tend to want to play with their food, and I don't know what the deal is. In the big games, they look like an elite team, and they look like they can play with anybody, but against lesser opponents. And I do think that Oklahoma State is a much lesser opponent.
Sure they
They
are.
they tend to play around a little bit, and that does worry me a little bit in picking them to cover. I just think that they're going to be up for this game more than any other. They've got a chance to win the Big 12 for the first time and seemingly forever. I guess I should have a stat. Somebody in the comment section, let me know when the last time Texas won the Big 12 championship was. But first time that I can remember, at least. So
I guess
I think that
09.
they're gonna, yeah, probably. I think that they're gonna be ready to play, and I think that they're gonna come out fiery, and those playmakers are gonna make plays, and I think that it comes down to the dudes you bring on the bus, and not so much the plays you like to call.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, keys to victory, like I said, who can get after the quarterback? Okay. Um, and here's another one. Third downs. Oklahoma State is only averaging converting 37% of their third downs for the year. But guess what? The Texas Longhorns are only converting 36% of their third downs.
Mm-hmm.
And both teams have trouble with accuracy. I mean, well, Texas is 66%. That's not bad. And then Oklahoma State is 59.5. So it's going to be a quarterback duel, man. I think that's what it's going to come down to. I think the running game for Texas has been depleted. Obviously, they don't have a ton of depth at running back right now. CJ Baxter's pretty much the only answer they have.
Yeah, and
So
he's
that's
banged
your
up.
yeah. So that I feel like that kind of makes this Texas team one dimensional.
Yeah.
There's college football coaches on that other sideline too, and they know this. They know this, and they're trying to get Texas in obvious passing downs and hoping that they can back up off that line of scrimmage. And if they can keep them in third and longs and keep this Texas team off schedule, I think they're going to be really successful. And I could see this one getting in the high scores. I could see this one being in the 60s for sure. So give
Yeah.
me Oklahoma State to cover and give me the over in this one. We got it surrounded, Mason. Somebody's winning some money on this thing. So let's see
We'll
how it
see
goes.
if we don't change our tune come Thursday for our betting show.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how I'm going to feel about it then. If I make, and actually history has proven that if I make bets this early, I tend to lose them. So, come Thursday, let's see where we're at.
Which one of us is right? Put it in the comment section and let us know which one of us is on the right side of this thing. We thank you all so much for watching. And Oklahoma State, you Cowboys fans and you Longhorns fans, we thank you so much for tuning in. And we hope that you will consider subscribing to the First and Long College Football Show. All right, everybody. Let's look at some comments. We've got several comments here, Mason. Let's kind of go through these. Mark writing with his toes. That's not it. Oklahoma State covering and over. Hey, that's what I said.
Sounds like he's on the same page as you.
You and
And
me, Siegs. That
G,
makes me feel a little better.
GA Dogs 47 is on the same page as me. Oklahoma will cover. Oh, he says Oklahoma will cover and the over will hit. I got you. So Oklahoma State's covering. Yeah,
That's why I was
I've
surprised
got
because you
Texas
commented
covering.
on there and said,
Yeah.
I, Mason, am with you.
It threw me off that he didn't put Oklahoma State, and for some reason I just read that
Yeah.
as Texas. But yeah, no,
Everybody does that to Oklahoma State. They don't say the state part for some reason. They forget, and I'm sure they love that.
I'm sure.
I'm sure they
Couldn't be
just
further
love that.
from the truth.
Let's see what this is. JP, hey JP, welcome to the comment section, buddy. Thank you so much for commenting. Oklahoma State plus 15. Is Texas that good? We're gonna see, buddy. We're gonna see. I don't think so. I think, look, Texas is a good team. There's no doubt they're a good team, but with this being a conference championship game, man, I got a hard time laying 15 or 14 points. I really do, and I just don't see this being a game. Oklahoma State has either showed up or they have just not even got off the bus. It's been one of the two in their games this year. I don't think this is a game where they don't get off the bus. I have a hard time seeing that.
They haven't been able to since that Oklahoma win, though, and that's what concerns me. Is I think that the two teams are trending sort of in opposite directions. They snuck by BYU last week, and I don't know, man.
Well, I mean, and Texas did the same thing, though. I mean, at TCU, 29-26.
Mhm.
At Iowa State, 26-16. That game was way closer than it should have been, and it was close to the fourth quarter. I mean, it was really, really close. I watched that one. And then Texas Tech, I mean, my God, Texas Tech has just fallen off the cliff. So now that was good. I mean, 57-7, that's all you can do to a bad team is beat the ever-living hell out of them, right? But, I just don't take a ton of stock in that. Maybe I should. It was rivalry week, and they were about the only ones that took care of business like that, so maybe I should consider it. Let's keep going with these comments, and we'll get to the next breakdown. Thank you all so much for commenting. We love that, and really helps out the show. Georgia Dogs, Texas 37, Oklahoma State 24. I almost did it. I almost forgot the state part. Texas is demolishing the Pokes, says Rob Falter. Hello, Rob. Welcome to the First and Long College Football Live show in the comment section. Thank you so much for commenting. Yeah, they might. If anybody's demolishing anybody, it would obviously be the Longhorns demolishing the Pokes, right? I don't think it's going the other way around for sure. So I think there's more of a chance of that happening than there is the Pokes demolishing the Longhorns for sure. But I think it's going to be a decent game, at least until the fourth quarter. Maybe Texas kind of runs away with it and maybe hits a backdoor cover. I could see that happening for sure. Again, thank you all so much for commenting. And just so y'all know, I'm not, as we do each of these shows, each of these little clips, I'm telling them to subscribe and like too, so we can get them in the live shows and in the comment section, all that good stuff. So I'm not telling you 100 times. I'm just having to tell different groups of people here. So let's jump in to a big one, guys. Let's get started here. Saturday, 4 p.m. on CBS, the Eye in the Sky. It's the SEC championship game. We got the Georgia Bulldogs, who are a 6-point favorite, versus the Alabama Crimson Tide. Over under 55. This is going to be at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, as it always is. It was at the Georgia Dome before that. What do you think about this line here? My goodness, it moved.
Yeah.
It moved in Georgia's direction, didn't it?
Yep, 2 whole points. Since I know I bet on this before last week's game, or maybe 2 weeks ago, at -4, and I'm glad I did now because that number's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kind of get into some of these numbers for each of these teams. I mean, the trajectories of these two teams have been a little bit different this year. Typically, Alabama is the team that's got the heavy head from the crown, right? And over the last couple years, you've kind of seen what some people have perceived to be a power shift in the SEC a little bit. But I'm going to tell you something. This Alabama Crimson Tide team, you have to cut the head all the way off the snake, okay? Or it will bite you.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just run this thing over, man. You can't just run this snake over, dude. You run this thing over and you get out to check on it, it's going to bite you. You've got to take the head clean off of the Alabama Crimson Tide if you're going to beat them. They are the epitome of a tough-nosed football team, and they've got the greatest coach of all time on their sideline in Nick Saban. And I think personally, Mason, this is Nick Saban's best coaching job this year.
Yeah.
The way that he has taken this team, that South Florida game earlier this year, man, a lot of people were they were selling their Alabama stock. They said, "Oh, the dynasty's over. Oh, the dynasty." I can't tell you how many times we saw that, heard that. And it was an embarrassing win, if there is such a thing. 17-3 against South Florida. Jalen Milroe doesn't play in that game. There's been rumors as to why, but we won't go there. That's another time for another show, another discussion there. Obviously got the loss at home this year, 34-24. That was the second game of the year against Texas. I feel like this team has changed a whole lot since that Texas game, and I think that Alabama is trending in the upward direction. I think if you had a line of Georgia versus Alabama, if you had a line after a week, 3 or 4, I think this thing would have been double digits. But Alabama has gotten better as the year has went on, and I think that we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that. But let's go ahead and go through some of these numbers, shall we? Offensively, we'll start with the Georgia Bulldogs. Offensively, yards per game, 490. That's 6th in the country. Rush yards per game, 185. That's 32nd in the country. Pass yards per game, 305. That's 8th. And points per game, 39.6. That's 7th in the country. Defensively, 280.5 yards given up per game. That's 12th in the country. 117.8 rushing yards per game. That's 28th. 162.7 yards per game given up through the air. That's 10th in the country. And then 15.8 points per game allowed on defense. That is 6th in the country. Flipping over to the Alabama Crimson Tide, let's go through offense first. 386.2 yards per game. That's 58th in the country. Rushing yards per game, 177.6. That's 46th in the country. Pass yards per game, 208.7. That's 72nd in the country. And points per game, 35.8, which is actually 17th in the country, which is pretty good considering those other numbers offensively. Defensively, 292 yards per game given up. That's 17th. 128 on the ground. That's 36th. 164 through the air. That's 11th in the country. And then defensive points per game, they give up 17.9. That is 14th in the country. We've seen a few games where Alabama seemed to be a little bit vulnerable, and one of them was this past week against Auburn. And I know some will chalk it up to a rivalry game, and I think Auburn had a good game plan, no doubt. But Alabama obviously squeaks out a pretty lucky one and a Iron Bowl that's going to go down in all of Iron Bowl lore. I mean, that was a unbelievable game, and if you haven't watched on the First and Long College Football Show, go check that out. Mason here depraved himself of college football and gave us a true and honest blind reaction to this football game. And it was definitely one to behold. And I hope that you will go and check that out on our channel, the First and Long College Football Show, and subscribe while you're there if you like what you see. Mason, take us through some of the key players for this Alabama symphony of the Crimson Tide. Tell us who's the important pieces. What are the keys to victory for the Alabama Crimson Tide against the reigning national champions, the Georgia Bulldogs?
Yeah, this is kind of becoming an SEC championship game like tradition, right? Georgia, Alabama. We missed it last year, or I guess Alabama missed it last year. But here recently we've seen this. 2 out of the last 3 championships game, I guess, or no, I guess now it would be 3 out of the last 5. But Georgia has never actually beaten the Tide in 3 matchups against them, going back to '92 since we started the division play in the SEC championship game. But this is the biggest spread that they have seen this year, as they're right now, at least they're 6-point favorites. Much of the reason of that is because of UGA's offense, scoring almost 40 points per game. They're led by their first-year quarterback and former Alabama commit, Carson Beck. He's a 4th-year player, and he has been outstanding for the Dogs with nearly 3,500 yards, 22 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. He's also completing 72.4% of his passes. He's just really smart and efficient with the football. He knows where to go and is able to get to his second and third reads when he needs to. It's very poised. It doesn't get rattled at all. I've been very impressed with his play this season. To go along with Beck, the Bulldogs have a good running game. Running behind a Joe Moore finalist offensive line is Kendall Milton and Dejon Edwards, who tote the rock. They provide that sort of 1-2 punch and that thunder and lightning that we've grown accustomed to seeing from Georgia. Milton especially has come on strong as of late, as he looks to be as healthy as we've ever seen him in his career. He's been putting up had back-to-back over 100-yard games, a few touchdowns in those games, and he just looks good when he runs. He runs physical. He's able to make some moves. We've seen him use a spin move here and there. He's playing some of his best ball and is certainly a threat against Alabama. And of course, the best tight end in the country, Brock Bowers, plays for Georgia, but we don't know yet what sort of factor he'll be this Saturday, as he's still healing up from tightrope surgery on his ankle. We did see him come back for 2 games after surgery, but he was rested last week against Georgia Tech, seemingly to make sure that he's able to play against Alabama. As of now, he is expected to play, but we don't know in what capacity. It seems like the soreness for him right now kind of comes and goes, so he'll be a bit of a game time decision, but I have a strong belief that he's going to play and probably be a pretty good factor in this game. Another big time catcher for Georgia that was unable to play last week was Ladd McConkey. He has not been 100% all season long, and his status is still up in the air as he deals with this lingering back issue and now an ankle issue. And the ankle is the one that is keeping him out or kept him out last game. But McConkey's absence has been less noticeable with players like Dylan Bell and Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint stepping up. I've been really impressed with those two and really the receiving core as a whole. Ra Thomas is another one who was out last week. I think he was just getting some rest. But he's one, the transfer from Mississippi State, the transfer from Missouri, Dominic Lovett. He's played really well. And I think Arian Smith, their deep threat, their speedster, is starting to kind of come back into the fold. Maybe we see, at least one shot. We tend to see Arian Smith in those bigger games and the bigger moments. Maybe we see that one deep shot that he's able to kind of take the top off the defense, and maybe they try to connect with him, in one or two, give him one or two throws. They've been getting him the ball in the running game, even in some end around. So I think that Georgia's offense is trying to take advantage of the speed of Arian Smith. So look to see him be a factor in this game as well. And then defensively, UGA has taken a step back this season. They have one of the best secondaries in the country, but have battled injury in their front seven. Jamon Dumas-Johnson will still be out for this one, dealing with a forearm injury. So true freshman CJ Allen will be the starter alongside Smile Munden again. Those two have played really well together. There really hasn't been much of a drop off in Jamon Dumas-Johnson's absence, outside of probably that first play of the Tennessee game that we all saw. But I've been really impressed with the true freshman stepping up and kind of taking the reins and taking control of the offense. But yeah, the area that UGA's defense definitely needs work in is containing the edge. We saw Georgia Tech last week run all over Georgia and using a lot of motion and end arounds. Look for Alabama to try to do the same thing and utilize some similar concepts. Another way that Alabama can take advantage of the lesser front seven is with some design run plays from Jalen Milroe. I have been so impressed with this guy and his ability to absolutely just take a football game over, whether it's on the ground, in the air. This guy can pretty much do it all. He has had a similar effect on football games this season as Jaden Daniels, but without those first round talented wide receivers that LSU has this year and tends to have every year. Bama does not have the first round talent that they have leaned on in recent years, but they don't rely on the wide receivers as much either. UGA transfer Jermaine Burton is the main deep threat, and he's averaging over almost 23 yards per catch this year. Him and Milrow have connected on some deep balls all season long, and I expect them to continue that this week as well. And then in the run game for the Tide, it's been decent, I think, but Bama fans might tell you that it leaves room for improvement, though, as they are averaging just 4.5 yards per carry, which is 54th in the country in rushing efficiency. Some of that is due to the negative plays from the sacks that Milrow has taken this season. I think that earlier in the year, this offensive line was taking a ton of sacks. We were kind of comparing them to like Colorado early in the year and how many sacks they were giving up. And I think that right now the offensive line is playing much better. I've seen them kind of create some good pockets for him in comparison, like relatively speaking, to what they were earlier in the year. I've seen a lot of improvement. I think that the offensive line's playing their best football right now. Couple that with Milrow's ability to scramble and create plays, and I think that Alabama will find some success on the ground. Defensively, Bama has one of the best secondaries in the country. Arnold and McKinstry are locked down on the outside, along with the true freshman phenom safety Caleb Downs, who leads the team in tackles with 95 this season. The next closest on the team has 61 for reference there. But similar to Georgia, teams have found some success running the football against the Tide, as they have given up an average of almost 4 yards per carry. Overall, I think that when I look at the defenses side by side, and I know that they don't match up against and play each other, but I think that there's a push kind of right there between Georgia and Bama, maybe a slight lean to Georgia overall, but they're similar in how effective they are, but they play somewhat different styles in a way. For my prediction, man, I am completely torn on this game. To me, UGA has the better offense. They certainly have the better passing attack, but I think that Milrow has a way of just taking a game over that could pose an issue for the Dogs. I do think that the team that protects the ball better will win. My head is telling me that Georgia wins and covers, but my gut is telling me that Bama is going to rip my heart out again. In this game, it's tough. It's tough as of right now. I think that my prediction is Georgia 30, Bama 24. I think it's a close game, but I have to go with the team that's better at passing the ball when they need to, and that to me is Georgia right now. We've seen big games like this and big moments in some of these bigger games come down to who can pass the ball the best, and we've seen those wide receivers, make plays in those bigger games, and I think that it comes down to that for Georgia again in this one. So give me the Dogs. It's a close game. I think that the number is kind of right on with my prediction at 6, but hey, I got it at 4, so I feel pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I think you nailed it in the fact that this game, I think, is going to come down to which defense can get the other's offense in an obvious passing situation. And who do you trust more in an obvious passing situation, Georgia or Alabama? And I'm taking Georgia in that situation. Georgia has shown the ability to throw the football all over the yard this year, and I would hate to think for Georgia that Brock Bowers or Lad McConkey wouldn't play in this game. That would be obviously a very big deal, as I thought the passing game was kind of lacking a little bit last week against Georgia Tech, and Georgia really leaned on real heavy on the run. That is one thing that we've seen with this Georgia team as the year has moved on. And speaking of Georgia and Bama, if you're a Georgia Alabama fan and you're watching this breakdown, we've been talking about your team all year and you hadn't even been here. So what you need to do right now is like the video and subscribe. And we've got tons of content. We got some great ideas for the off season, even though nobody's even thinking about that right now. But we're just getting started with conference championships and playoffs. So come and join the First and Long College Football Show. We'd love to have you. Come be part of this community that we've got going here. I want to see who's going to be able to run the ball effectively and keep the third downs at a short down and distance. I think that that's
Mhm.
very, very important in this game. Got to stay ahead of the chains, and whichever defense can prove to keep the other in check on first and second down, I think is going to have a lot of success. Do you feel like Georgia is going to be able? We all know that Georgia likes to play a lot of man defense anyway. I mean, I've heard a lot of people talking about online. Do you think Georgia is going to be able to spy a backer on Jalen Milroe and cover man to man with these wide receivers? Because I feel like this Alabama team is a little bit different of if you compare them to ones in the past with Jamison Williams and Devontae Smith and just all these really awesome, prolific wide receivers. Um, I don't really see one of those on this team. I know Jermaine Burton is pretty good, and he's had a good season as he's a senior. He's been in college for a while now. Um, do you see Georgia being able to have success defensively spying Milroe? Because I feel like if they do have success doing that, I feel like Georgia's going to be able to control this game pretty well.
Yeah, I think that they could, and I think that they'll do it in multiple ways. Some downs, you'll see Darius Smith in there, the speedster. He's kind of that sort of backup outside linebacker, or you've actually seen a lot of Raylan Wilson,
Hmm.
number 5 on defense, who's coming off as an outside linebacker, sort of hand up. He's a true freshman, 5-star phenom, but he battled injury early in the season. I think you might see him kind of off the edge, spying a little bit, and then also you'll see one of the middle linebackers, whether that's C.J. Allen or Smile Munden, might be the more capable middle linebacker for spying a quarterback like that. But you'll see the outside linebacker, and also I'll throw in the star Tyke Smith, who might play that role a little bit as well. But you'll see kind of those three positions taking turns, and it'll keep Alabama on its toes as far as knowing where to pass the ball. Because if you know that one certain player is going to spy the quarterback every single play, that tells you where to pass it over the middle, right? So you got to kind of be multiple, and I think Georgia
Hmm.
has the speed to be able to do that. I don't think that. I think that Milroe will have some success scrambling, but I'm not sure that he's going to have the success. Absolutely just coming back and doing a quarterback draw or doing any sort of quarterback design runs necessarily.
Yeah, and we haven't seen him play the read option game a whole lot. But he, I was kind of dissecting these teams as we were getting ready for this show, and I kind of wanted to know how often is Alabama running the ball versus how often are they passing the ball? And out of 756 offensive plays this year, they're passing only 37% of the time. So 63% rush. Whereas Georgia this year, 822 plays from scrimmage, 49% pass, 51% rush. Who would actually thought that? I would have thought that Georgia, by the looks of the Georgia squad this year, it feels like they are throwing 60% of the time because I think every time they throw it, they're so effective. Um, and I don't think that we can say that about Alabama quite as much. Yards per rush, Georgia at 5.3 for the year. Yards per rush for Alabama, 4.5 for the year. Um, we heard a lot coming into this season that Alabama was going to be more of a running team. Those yards per rush, well, I think would be a lot higher if Milroe was running the football earlier this season.
Hmm.
It was really the LSU game where we saw him all of a sudden. It was like, okay, one read, two read, I'm gone.
Yeah.
And it seems like there is a lot more rhythm to it. Whereas in the beginning of the season, it was more like one read, not there, I'm gone. And it was almost you didn't even give his team a chance to create a pocket for him or and he kept taking his eyes off of the downfield targets. So he has grown in an immense amount this year, and I am very, very excited to watch this football game. I'm going to take Georgia. I'm going to take the points to cover. I think Georgia can cover this spread. I may change my mind on this one, especially considering how this line is moving. I may decide later on this week that I want to get on the Alabama side, especially if this thing gets up to 7.
Hmm.
But for right now, give me the Georgia Bulldogs -6. I'll take them, um, and I think this is just going to be an outstanding game, and I cannot wait to see it. Let's go check some comments. Thank you all so much for staying tuned in with us. We certainly appreciate that. Oh, man. We have a comment from Tongue P. What do you think will win tomorrow? Kentucky versus Miami. Can you talk?
I think he means. I don't know what he means.
College basketball?
Oh,
Hey, Tongue P, this is college football, buddy. Thank you so much for tuning in, though. I appreciate that. You can like the video on your way out, though. Don't leave without doing that. Georgia Dogs 47. I'm picking Alabama +6 and the under, but I hope I lose money on this one and Georgia wins by 3 possessions. Yeah, I think.
do you think he's a Georgia fan?
I tell you what, my dad said the same thing last night. I'm not going to lie to you. He said, "Man, I feel like it's going to be a close one, but golly, I'd love to beat them good and
Yeah.
really take the crown." And I know a lot of Georgia Bulldogs fans feel the same exact way. So, going to be a lot of tight, puckered up heinies on watching this one.
I will be pacing watching this one. You'll see me behind the couch, just from one side of the sofa to the other.
I thought you were scheduled for the blind reaction.
Yeah, right. Y'all gonna have to come see me live.
Yeah, I'm telling you what, there ain't no chance in hell you can keep me away from this game. There ain't nothing, no unmovable object that could keep me away from this football game. Let's keep it going. Thank you all so much for tuning in, even you, Tongue P. We certainly do appreciate that. Mason just told you we'll get to that game later.
I'm hiding that one. I can't read tonight, apparently. I'm dealing with a little bit of a cold, and I'm all drugged up, and I'm seeing things I want to see, apparently.
Thank you anyway, Tongue P. All right, let's get on to our next one here. That's not the right one. Let's try that again. Saturday, 8:00 on Fox. It's the Big Ten championship game. It's the Michigan Wolverines and the Iowa Hawkeyes. Michigan is a 23-point favorite. Over-under set at 35.5. This one's at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. So the Big Ten gets a night game because it's in a dome. So that's cool. That's always a good thing. 23-point favorite in a conference championship game is unbelievable. Listen, if you are a Michigan Wolverine fan or you are an Iowa Hawkeye, I want you to listen very closely. Hit the subscribe button and come hang out with us here at First and Long College Football Show. That's right, I just deked you, but I need you to hit the button because you're missing out on a lot of college football coverage that you need in your life, and we're here to bring it to you. We're building a great college football community, and we want you Michigan Wolverine fans and Iowa Hawkeye fans to come hang out with us. So come and do that, please. Let's go through some of these numbers, and we'll kind of give our takes on this football game. Thank you all so much for joining. Yards per game for Michigan. We'll start on offense. Yards per game, 385.6. That's 59th in the country. Rush yards per game, 169, basically 170. That's 54th in the country. 216 yards passing per game. That's 60th in the country. And points per game, 13th at 37.6. So making a lot of lemonade out of a few lemons on offense, scoring plenty of touchdowns and putting plenty of points on the board. Defensively, yards per game, they're giving up 229.2. That's number 2 in the country. 91.4 on the ground. That's 7th. 137.8. That's 4th in the country on yards given up through the air. And then points per game at 10.2. That is absurd. Almost a single digit points per game on that scoring defense. That's obviously first in the country and first in the Big Ten. Let's flip over to these Iowa Hawkeyes. Yards per game offensively, 231.8. That is 133rd out of 133. Rushing yards per game, 123.9. That's 104th. Passing yards per game, 107.9. That's 130th. And points per game at 18. They're averaging 18 points per game. That is insane. And they're in the Big Ten championship game at 10-2. But it's because of this right here. This Iowa Hawkeyes defense, 271.3 yards per game given up. That's 8th in the country. 104.9 rushing yards per game. That's 17th. 166 yards per game passing. That's 13th in the country. And 12.2 points per game given up. That is 4th in the country. So you've got, it's night and day with this Iowa offense and defense. Horrible offense. Don't score any points. We all know the story about Kirk Ferentz having to tell his son that he's no longer going to be the offensive coordinator after the season. Little did they know that they'd be trekking, to Indianapolis, to Lucas Oil Stadium for a conference championship game. So I guess after the bowl game, Brian Ferentz is going to have to fire his own son, essentially, is what's happening. They've already communicated about that. Really fascinating story. Needed to average 25 points per game, I believe is what it was, and they're at 18 points per game offensively. So got to tell the son goodbye after that. Mason, you want to take us through a key to victory for Iowa in this game? How can Iowa muck this thing up?
Man,
There's
I think
really
it's
only
gonna.
one answer, but let's hear what you got to say.
Yeah, it's you're gonna have to turn the ball over on every
Amen.
every
Bingo.
possession just about for Michigan. This is gonna be a tough game for Iowa. I don't think it's impossible for them to win this game, though. I do think that this is a team that prides themselves on defense. That defense has got to be jacked up going into this game, knowing, hey, it stops and ends with us. We're going to win or we're going to lose this game. This one unit is going to win or lose this game. I think that they're going to need to get like a pick six. They're going to need to get a scoop and score. Might need both of those to go off, and a defensive or a special team score. I don't think that the problem with this matchup is not so much that I don't have an issue with Iowa's defense, right? I think that they have proven themselves to be very good against lesser opponents, sure, but the same can be said about Michigan, right? Other than really Ohio State, that's really the only offense that they face that I think is an upper half sort of offense. But I think that for me, the challenge for Iowa is going to be their offense scoring points against this Michigan defense, which is an even better defense than Iowa's. That to me is why I can't wrap my head around a scenario in which Iowa wins this game. This is at least the third time in a row that we've seen this matchup, and Iowa hasn't been able to get anywhere with it. Man, unless some really weird stuff happens, right? I don't have any sort of magic. I wish for the Iowa fan that's watching, and notice that's singular, the Iowa fan that's watching, you out
We
there.
have an Iowa fan watching.
Yeah, they're gonna be watching. They're gonna watch this video, and they're gonna be mad at me because I can't give Iowa a way to win this game, and I hate that for them. But this is going to be a very defensive game, obviously, and you see the over under set at 35.5. It's funny to me that's set at 35.5, but Michigan's a 23-point favorite, so you're telling me that Iowa's not going to score, right? And that's how I feel about this game. If they do score, it'll be defensive, right? At least a touchdown, right? I could see maybe a field goal here and there, but they're going to need touchdowns to win this game. So I don't see them going for many field goals. So there's a real scenario where Iowa gets shut out in this game. And I fear for that because I'm going to have to watch that game. And I want to see a good game, So I don't know. Overall, I wish I had a little bit more of a lean towards Iowa, but I'm thinking that this is going to be. Oh man, I think it's going to end up being 27-7. I think that they cover, and mainly the reason why I think that Michigan only scores 27 is because they know that that's all they have to score, and they're going to win this game. We know that Michigan is they don't want people to know their game plan. right? They keep it close to their vest. So why go out there and tell the world what you want to do when you don't have to?
Yeah.
So play vanilla, run the ball, and get out of there with a win. Get out of there without any injuries. You'll see McCarthy throw the ball 10 times, maybe. And it's going to be low scoring because of that. So I still like the under to hit in this. And it hit last week. Iowa had the lowest point total last week with Nebraska at 25.5. And guess what? The under still hit. So, do with that what you will. You get an extra 10 points this week with a better offense. But nonetheless, I think that Iowa is really on like shutout alert this week. But do you have any other points that maybe you can give the Iowa fans some hope on?
You just got to pray that, Michigan's team, leaves the ranch out too long in the heat and everybody gets the bubble guts. I mean, I don't know what what else you can really hope for in this. I mean,
Yeah.
I hate to be, I hate to be that way, but that's about all that they can hope for, man.
Maybe Michigan doesn't get off the bus.
Yeah, maybe the bus gets a flat tire and they're late and disqualified, and they automatically give the Big Ten championship to Iowa. I mean, look, Michigan has done whatever they needed to win every football game this year, and they're not going to do any more than that. They're going to do exactly what they need to win this football game, and I think they're going to be able to run the football on this team. They've been able to run the football on everybody. I don't see why they wouldn't be able to do it on Iowa. I think there's going to be a lot of possessions for Michigan. I think there's going to be a pretty good bit of punting, but Michigan, I think, is going to be able to get field position in this game, and I think they're going to be able to keep it because I don't see Iowa putting together any drives worth of crap that are going to flip the field on Michigan. So I feel like Iowa's going to be working from, their, really close to their end zone a lot. And I think maybe it could even result in a safety or two. We've seen that situation a lot in these Michigan games. I think you're right on it. I don't think JJ McCarthy is going to be dropping back and throwing a lot. I don't think you want to try to test that in this game. I think it's unnecessary. And for that reason, I'm going to take the Michigan Wolverines to cover the 23, and I suspect that they will win this game 35-0. That's what I think is going to happen in this one.
The under still hits.
And the under still hits by half a point. I think Vegas is right on with this one. 35-0. I'm predicting Michigan takes out Iowa as Jim Harbaugh is cruising the sideline in the khakis. He's a Michigan man, Mason. He's a Michigan man, and he will do whatever a Michigan man can. Give me the Wolverines in this one, and they're going to win the Big Ten and go to the college football playoff. Let's check some comments. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We've had several of y'all in here the whole time, and it's been fun. We're making all our videos for the week, and we're so glad that you can join us for that. All right, where did we leave off? Georgia Dogs 47. I'm big on the over. I call this best bet of the week for the over. Y'all, Georgia Dogs 47 calls overs. So you're calling the over for the Michigan game?
He was 2-0 last week, by the way.
I know. I think about him whenever the games are going on. I'm like, that dude covered again.
Yep.
Covered his bet.
Hey,
over on that game?
5-0. What's your record on the season with your plays on the show, Georgia Dogs? Let us know in the comments.
He loves the over, y'all.
I think he's at 5-0.
You see Georgia Dogs 47 mashing the over button, then watch out. Now, I don't like my under.
I know, right?
Siegs, it would make the playoffs so much better if Michigan lost. Yeah. Honestly,
I disagree because I think that I think that the other three teams that would be in that would be in the college football playoff want to beat Michigan, right? Because of the sign stealing and because of all the hoopla around them. I think that there are a lot of teams that are kind of thirsty to beat them.
Yeah,
and Iowa's probably at the top of that list. So I guess what do I know? But
it would be cool if you just saw Ferentz like in his last game as offensive coordinator. He's like, all right, look, we're running 5 wide.
Yeah.
Where they have no idea what's coming, guys. They
Yeah.
are going to be so confused, and they just take the field. But I
First
mean,
play.
I feel like they'd have just as good of a chance as they do right now, which is none.
Yeah.
Siegs, if UGA loses, what's the playoffs look like? Well, if UGA loses, Alabama's in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then you're just going to have to kind of wait and see, because if Washington wins, they're undefeated. They're obviously going. If Florida State wins, they're undefeated. They're obviously going. And if Michigan wins, they're undefeated. So they're obviously going if they win. So you'd be talking about Alabama being in there amongst three other undefeated teams in the playoff. So, you would need, and I think that would leave out, well, I don't know. I mean, what do you do with
That would
Texas
leave
at that point? If
Texas with one
Texas,
loss out, and Georgia with one loss.
but are
I
they
think
going to put in Texas over Alabama, whom Texas beat, and they both have
right,
one loss?
right.
You know,
Yeah, the head-to-head should matter.
I know
Yeah,
eye test is a thing. I get it, but I mean, we have to respect the head-to-head. I mean,
yeah,
otherwise, what are we playing all this for?
yeah. I,
You
I
know,
I'm of the belief that the regular season should still matter, even if it was week 2.
yeah,
Like that should still matter. I think more interestingly though is what if Oregon beats Washington, and redeems himself and wins the only loss, or kind of redeems himself from the only loss that they had earlier in the season. And then you've got Texas, Alabama, and Oregon, all as one-loss conference champions. And then you've got Florida State undefeated and, Ohio State undefeated. Who's left out?
right, right.
I guess it'd
Uh,
have to be Oregon.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a scenario this weekend where all the teams are undefeated. I mean, it's really
Yeah,
wild.
yeah.
Um, Very, very wild. And Siegs, Georgia Dogs 47 said for the over, all of them. He's saying over on all of these suckers. And Sieg says Michigan or FSU loss would make things so much easier. Yeah, well, somebody's got to. The committee is going to have a really, really hard time if we got all these undefeateds and these one losses. So I'm interested to see, or if one loses, they're going to have a hard time choosing which one loss team gets in. There's going to be several one loss teams, I think. So we'll have to see. An FSU loss would definitely, kind of shape things, and that kind of leads us into our next game and our final game breakdown of the week. Saturday, 8:00 on ABC. It's the Louisville Cards versus the FSU Noles, Mason. It's the ACC championship game at Bank of America Stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina, heart of the ACC conference there. FSU is a 2.5-point favorite, slimmest margin of all of the conference championship games. Over under is set at a low 48.5. Thank you so much for tuning in to the First and Long College Football Show. I'm Marcus. That's Mason. We have a weekly college football show here at First and Long, and we want you to be part of it. So to do that, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. A bunch of you Louisville fans have already done that. And I know that you had a tough loss last week, but this season ain't over. Greatness is still on the horizon. And hopefully for you, by Saturday, greatness will be on the horizon behind you to win the ACC. FSU, on the other hand, has other plans, don't they? They are undefeated this season and are on their backup quarterback, as Jordan Travis, everybody knows at this point, has went down with an absolutely gruesome leg injury. And I hope he's doing well. Saw him on TV this past week, Florida State and Florida in the press box. I wish him the best of wishes, and hate that for Florida State fans because I know they were fired up to see Jordan Travis get into the postseason. But nonetheless, you still made it. Jordan Travis did his job. He helped lead this team to where they needed to be. As I said, please subscribe and like the video and leave us your score prediction in the comment section. We'd love to see that and really do appreciate it. Let's dive in to this matchup and let's check out, some of the highlights and lowlights of this team and statistically where each of these teams are. We'll start with the Florida State Seminoles. Offensively, 419.5 yards per game. That's 35th in the country. 156.2 rush yards per game. That's 68th in the country. Pass yards per game, 26 in the country at 263.2, and points per game, 38.8. Now, I want you all to take those stats with a grain of salt because we now have a new quarterback at Rodemaker. Last week, he went 12 of 25, 134 yards, no interceptions, but no touchdowns as Florida State got the victory over Florida. This offense is clearly going to look different without their leader, Jordan Travis, but it will be coupled with a pretty good defense. Let's go through some of those numbers. 295.9 yards per game given up. That's 18th in the country. 140.2 yards per game allowed rushing. That's 46th. They're 9th in the country, though, at pass yards per game allowed at 155.8. And points per game, 16.8 allowed. That is good for the 11th best scoring defense in the country. This team obviously was led by Jordan Travis, as we said, but Tate Rodemaker has taken over. He's got 510 yards for the year. And obviously, we've talked about the awesome additions that this team has made through the transfer portal with Keon Coleman, 639 yards receiving. Johnny Wilson is the big possession wide receiver that you throw your 50-50 balls to, about 6'7" bad dude. And Jaheim Bell, the transfer from South Carolina, also working as a receiver in that offense, tight end, kind of a hybrid player. And they even line him up in the backfield at times, which I think is very, very productive. Let's look at the Louisville Cardinals coming off of a very, very disappointing defeat. The fans were so jacked up to play Kentucky. They wanted to take down Big Blue so bad, and it didn't happen this time. 38-31, Kentucky ends up winning on a last-minute run by Ray Davis Sr. Absolute heart-crushing defeat at home. The Louisville fans and Jack Harlow were turned up, and Ray Davis hit him with the L's down, and that seems to be something that's trending all over the internet. And I know Louisville fans hate that, but I'm telling you, Louisville fans, you got everything you want right here in front of you. Let's go through some of the numbers of this Brom team. And Brom, by the way, should absolutely be in the discussion for Coach of the Year. Absolutely, no doubt about that. Offensively, 426 yards per game. That's 29th in the country. Rush yards per game, 184.7. That's 33rd. Pass yards per game, 45th at 241. And points per game, 33, which is 32nd in the country. So, hey, they're a very serviceable offense, top 30 in pretty much everything. Defensively, we'll switch over to that side of the ball. 298 yards per game allowed. That's 19th in the country. 96.8 yards rushing per game allowed. That's 12th in the country. Actually did a good job against Kentucky last week against the rush. Just gave up some big plays, and it really, really cost them. Pass yards per game, 201.2. That's 47th in the country. And points per game, defensively, 20 allowed per game. That's 25th in the country for scoring defense there. This team is ran by Jack Plummer, a transfer quarterback. He's got 2,952 yards, had a very successful season this year. The Russian leader, Jawar Jordan, I've heard has been a little bit banged up, as everybody is at this point of the year, but he's got 1,076 yards. But this is a two-headed Russian monster, as Isaac Guarendo, 639 yards for the season. They've been a nice 1-2 punch at running back for the Cards. Jamari Thrash, 801 receiving yards, although been a little more quiet as of recently, been battling some injuries. Chris Bell has kind of stepped up in the past couple of weeks, as well as Kevin Coleman Jr. at wide receiver. Those are kind of your main targets for this team. Mason, with both of these teams undressed, give us your take. How do you think the Cards can win this game? What do the Florida State Seminoles need to do to take care of those said Cards?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me. We saw this line move, so it was at 6 points. Florida State was favored up until Jordan Travis went out with an injury, right? And now you're saying that they're only a 2.5 point favorite. But I really like what I saw from Rodemaker last week. He had a pretty bad first half, I thought. But the second half, he made some really nice throws. So I do think that he should be able to make some good throws in this game as well. Depending on how comfortable he is in this game. So, early on, I lean Louisville. And for some reason, I have like a gut feeling that Louisville is going to be able to pull this out. But when I look at it on paper and when I think about it, my head tells me that Florida State should win this easily. Louisville's worst aspect on defense is their passing game and their passing defense, and that's what Florida State likes to do most. They've got the elite wide receivers and Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and Jaheim Bell, who can go and go out and get it. And I think that Rodemaker made some impressive throws that I think he's going to be able to do it over the top. I don't think that this will be a very high scoring game, especially in that first quarter. But I think eventually Rodemaker will settle, and he's gonna lead Florida State to victory. I do think, though, if Louisville can get the running game going, I think that would pose some real issues for Florida State. Looking at it, Florida State against the run, they are 48th, giving up 140 yards per game. That's a pretty good bit of yards, 3.9 yards per rush. But against the pass, they've been pretty good, and that's where Louisville has struggled. So I think that there's an area that they can attack at least is Louisville running the football against Florida State. But that they got to do a whole lot of rushing to be able to beat this team. I think that if Rodemaker is able to play like he did in that second half against Florida, I think that's the big catalyst, right? He's sort of the keystone species of this game, if you will, and I think that he is going to dictate how this game goes and who wins this game. So, but I think that the experience, even though it's not in-game experience, he's kind of an older guy who's been in the system for a long time. I think that will prevail. I think that Florida State's going to be able to pull this one out. As far as a score prediction, I'm going to say 23-20. Florida State wins over Louisville. I think it's a close game. Another one that Florida State comes from behind. We've seen it over and over again this year. It's kind of become their identity, but they'll come from behind and kind of win it, midway through the fourth quarter and secure the win that way. Close game, but I like Florida State in this one.
Well, I'm going to jump on the other side of the fence. I was on the Cards last week, and they let me down. And they followed the same recipe that they did in the loss against Pitt, and it seems like a trend. If Louisville can protect the football in this game, I think they can win this sucker outright. They have got to run the ball effectively, though. That's going to be a key to this football game. But let's talk about Florida State for a minute. I've seen Florida State several times this year line up with Jaheim Bell and Trey Benson in the backfield at the same time. I didn't see that enough last week. And if Florida wasn't such a undisciplined football team, I think Florida could have won that football game last week. I really do. And and that's part of the game. Florida, like I said, they're very undisciplined. But they're not a good football team at all, man. I mean, 5-7 for the year. Gave Florida State everything that they wanted. I think Rodemaker was pretty nervous at the beginning of that game, though, and I think he will settle down a bit. But I just didn't see what I thought I was going to see out of this offense. I thought Rodemaker was going to be able to run the football in this offense. I really thought that was going to be more of the game plan. Maybe they're holding that back for this week. Trying to make
they can't afford to have him hurt.
Well, sure. I get it. You don't want what's his name? Glenn, Broccoli Glenn.
Brock Glenn. That just sounds like a backup, like third string quarterback name.
Yeah, definitely going to be selling insurance at the State Farm Brock Glenn division. But no, I mean, at some point you got to let it all hang out. I mean, what are you got to try to win this ACC championship game. So I think I think they'll probably run them a little bit more because what are you? I mean, at this point, what are you protecting yourself from? You got to go all out and try to win this thing. Otherwise, you're not getting in the playoff anyway.
Yeah.
So I think we'll probably see some wrinkles that we didn't see last week from the Florida State offense with Rodemaker. Um, I would like to have seen Florida State run the ball a little more effectively, although, that is what ended up winning them the game and ultimately giving them a 10-0 edge in the fourth quarter where they beat the Florida Gators. That was the difference in the football game. But I think Jawar Jordan is going to be good to go for this game. I think that this Louisville Cardinals team is going to be able to stop the run and run the football in this game. I don't think they want to get Jack Plummer sitting back in the pocket waiting on this Florida State defense because they will get after the quarterback. This is a defense that revolves around getting to the quarterback with Jared Verse. Very, very good front seven there. But I think whenever Louisville, if they can stay in front of the chains and have short third downs where, they keep the defense on their heels, they don't know if they're running or passing, that's whenever this team is most effective. Brom has built a very efficient football team. They everything relies on something else on this team. Very complimentary, very well rounded. Not just amazing at one thing, but pretty good at everything. I feel like Kentucky was a beneficiary, obviously, of 3 turnovers last week, and I feel like that's probably why this number's a little bit down on Louisville. I think you can't help but have a perception of this team after what you just saw last week, and that's kind of what I think Vegas is betting on here. I think this game is more of a pick 'em, in my opinion. I think that makes a lot more sense. But if you're giving me plus 2.5, I'm taking Louisville. I'm going to take those points plus 2.5. I think this is going to be a really good football game, and I think it's going to be something like 30-27, or 27-24. I don't think this one is going to be, crazy high scoring or anything. I think that over, I think the over on a low number of 48.5 would probably be good because I think both teams will give up some yardage in this one. But give me Louisville plus 2.5. I'm riding the Brom and the Plummer train one more time this season. Let's go Cards. Come on, make me some money. All right, guys. Let's check down here, see if we got any more comments. Mark Moran. Hey, Mark Moran. He says hi. Siegs, Louisville by 3 under. That's what I said. Me and Siegs are linked up today. We are one in the same better, I think, right now. Michigan or FSU loss would make things so much easier. We already read that one.
I think Siegs is fading all of my bets, and that's probably a pretty smart tactic.
One of us is going to be right.
Yeah.
One of us is going to be right. So we've got it surrounded. Thank you all so much for tuning in tonight. That was fun, and you guys make it fun, but by commenting in the comment section while we're doing this live. I like having you guys
for the
to
record,
talk to
though,
in between videos and stuff.
For the record, like 2 weeks ago, I put money on Louisville at +6, and I feel pretty good about that now since that line's crept down as much as it is. So,
so you got that already, huh?
Yeah. I got that in before the Travis injury, so ain't gonna be able to find a +6 out there anymore.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Guys, this is going to be a really exciting week of college football. Y'all, if you guys are into watching highlights and everything like that, go check out some of the videos that we just did. Mason did some blind reactions to some football games. He actually inadvertently was not able to watch some of the games, and then life gives you lemons, and he made lemonade. So you get to watch his blind reaction to the football games for the first time. A lot of people like watching the good highlights and stuff anyway. Why not watch them with First and Long? And, you get to watch the highlight all the same. So really good videos there, and people really seem to like that. So if you guys like that, I hope that you'll comment and let us know, give us some feedback, because you are the subscribers and we do this for you guys. So we thank you so much and would love your input. For the First and Long College Football Show, though, we are going to sign off for tonight. We have got some videos to clip up and get out there. We thank you all so much. Again, I tell you 100 times a show because I just certainly appreciate the hell out of it, and really, really enjoy you guys talking to us and stuff and keeping us company in between making these videos, and just a lot of fun chopping it up with you guys this season. And we're going to have a lot more people in this comment section next year. And throughout the postseason here, and we got some big plans, and hope that you guys will join us. But we're going to sign out if Mason doesn't have anything else, and hope that you all have a good night.
That's all I got. Y'all have a good night.
See you on Thursday for Between
Thursday
the
night.
Lines.